is the silent stage. I see this all the time argued on the internet about, and you got your purists who love amps, which I'm also a purist in a way, because I have maybe 10 heads and probably six. I know I have 6 412s, and then I have so much analog guitar gear, it's crazy. Combos, heads, little heads, big heads, you name it. I have the ADA from back in the 90s and a big rack and all this stuff. So anyway, I had all that, and over time I fell into a amp stage, silent stage. It's a long story, but I'm going to try to condense it. Started out back in 2007-ish. A couple things happened, actually. First thing was that I got tinnitus in the early 2000s, and so I needed to be more cautious with my ears. That led to me using in-ears with a 412 and a head, and I'm listening to it from the board at the time. This is the stereo mix, because they didn't really have a great way to do that. I was using a cable, headphone cable, and a set of E2s. I think they were the entry-level Shure in-ears. So I got used to that with some reverb on the mains, using, like I said, a 412 cabinet. Then one night, I remember what the head was. It was I had a Bogner Line 6 head, one of those hybrids, and it went down. I lost a tube or something, and it went down, and I was screwed. And my backup that night was a Line 6 Pod XT that I had, 4-board. So I plugged it in, got going, and then I get off stage, and one of our regular female fans goes, "Hey, what did you do?" And I said, "What do you mean, what did I do?" And she goes, "It sounds better." I was like, "What? What sounds better?" "The guitar sounds better." I'm like, "Really?" I was like, "You seriously?" After that, she said that, I went out front and listened. I walked out during the next set and listened to the mains because she said that. And by God, she was right. It sounded incredible. I don't know if I just got lucky or what, but I didn't manage to get a really great Van Halen-esque sound out of that XT. And I used this model called Spinal Puppet, which I used for another 10 years after that, with a great effect. You can find videos on my channel where I'm using that, actually, and it sounds great. Very, I wouldn't say quite as good as the Fractal, but what the sound I got was very satisfying for me, and it got me through all those years. Anyway, so after that happened and the head went down, I started trying to do that, and it helped with the in-ears. I got better sound that way, because you didn't have to deal with mic placement and all that. That eventually, it led to me using a small amp on stage, because the Pod X3 Pro, which was the next generation from the pedal, that was the rack version, was able to send a line out without cab emulation to another power amplifier. So I ran that for a long time into a Marshall Class 5. That was my sound on stage. So it had a little bit of a tube thing, obviously, from that. And it was sort of a hybrid, which is what I had done early days of, like maybe the ADA had a hybrid at one point set up. So anyway, I was kind of used to trying different things. Okay, so from that point, I just went 10 years and eventually just started not even using the Marshall anymore. I still, and maybe in the last 5 years, I've occasionally used an amp on stage to put a little sound across the middle, but it's running off whatever, off the Fractal. It's running off, at the time it was running off the X3. That's how I got into no amps on stage. The side effect, of course, is less security, less weight, no 412s, and the ultimate flexibility and effects. One of the things the X3 had on it that I loved was the amazing shortboard pedal, which integrated wah and volume, which I loved, and I was obsessed with that. The other part of that is that it had a very simple cable to connect it power-wise, and also to the unit through Cat 5, which was way ahead of its time. So I had a small Cat 5 going back that powered the board, ran all my effects, and coming from the days of the Bradshaw switcher or MIDI switching, which is what I did with the ADA, this was basically that, but much easier. The effects, of course, much better quality. So I continued that path all the way to the Fractal, and that took me a couple years to learn it and get really good at it, but it's pretty much unlimited what you can do with the Fractal. And with all the bands that have used it, you obviously know that it's pro level. And so that's where I am with silent stages, and that's why I'm on a silent stage. I get it about the purist kind of thing, but let's talk about what it's like out front. All right, recently out front, this is the argument. I mean, feel isn't sufficient. It doesn't have the same impact. I agree and disagree with that. Okay, so last week I saw Steel Panther, and Steel Panther has no amps on stage. The new PA system that our venue has here in town, the BAW, I think it's called the Anya, has the ability to steer sound, I think 90 degrees downward from a straight non-curved array. Because of the trend of silent stages, I believe that PA is going to move more like that. It's going to move to start to fill the middle better. The main arrays are going to start to be designed to deal with that challenge. That's usually done by small front fills. Hopefully that will become less and less of an issue. Now, back in the day, if you were close to the stage, all you were going to hear is the monitors cranked going the other direction, hitting the back wall, and you're going to hear drums in your face and guitar in your face. Here's what you lose. You lose the vocal. And when you lose the vocal, to me, you're screwed. If you know, I know as a guitar player, sure, I loved sitting in front of George Lynch's Marshall 412 and barely hearing the vocal. But as a regular person that listens to music as a listener, just a regular person, not a musician, they want to hear the vocal. So who are you selling to? A few musicians or to average listeners? So maybe with George Lynch, you're selling to the guitar players, right? I get it. But generally, if it's some other band, they want to hear the vocals. And that is the challenge of having a lot of onstage sound, is getting the vocal to fight through that and every bit of that volume. So then the vocal has to come way, way up, and everything has to come way, way up, and they just won't accept that anymore at any level anymore. So that's where we are with silent stages, the challenges of front filling, and the challenges of getting the vocal up. I mean, I agree, I love guitar on the stage as much as anybody, but I disagree that the general consumer wants that blasted in their face. Now, at Steel Panther, which I'll insert a clip where you can hear it, me and my buddy, who were both in a band together for years, played the same venue that they're playing in the video, and we were discussing what we could hear and not hear, and we were right against the rail, right up front. And we could hear the solos good. It wasn't, ideal, but it was loud enough that you could hear it good. And the opening act was the same way. And I'll insert some videos so you can check that out. Again, you could hear the vocals. You could hear everything really well. And the drums are far enough back. Real drums are fine. So I always have this philosophy back when I first started using in-ears, and probably before that actually, that I wanted it to sound like an arena PA in a club. That was my goal. It's always been my goal to get it to that quality. And, I guess that really goes back to when I worked in a music store and sold PA and stuff. I just knew what it sounded like, what the great PA sounded like. So I wanted to hear that in the club when I played gigs. I just thought it was an advantage to have that good of sound. And when people come to see you, they, are amazed. And I remember seeing other bands who had that level of quality sound, and I was just always blown away when they did that. So that was my goal, and so I've been working at that for my entire career. I've gone through many variations of PAs and setups. So we get to the point where people want the volume down. We're already doing ample stages, silent stages, and then you've got drums. All right, so here's your problem. Depending on the drummer's technique or lack thereof, they're going to be pretty loud compared to, imagine you got no amp at all. So all you're going to hear is drums up front, unless you have some significant front fill or some amps on stage. So here's the problem in a club. You got people, up close, and you sometimes have a wide room where you got no fill. And you got no way to do that. It's not far enough back like it is in a bigger venue to where you can do some EQ on the mains and it still accentuates and improves the sound. You don't have that luxury in a small room. So my drummer in particular was just a hardcore rock metal type drummer. And to say that, how do I say this? Playing low is not his strong point. It's not the way he's ever played. So it just does not come natural to him at all. And it is something that he struggles with. So the only other option I had was him to go to electronic kit so we could get the volume down at the same time, improve the sounds of the drums. Now that took a while because the quality of cymbals on electronic kits is pretty bad, and then the nitro kit we used at first was pretty decent on the toms and kick and snare. We had a decent sound, but the cymbals were horrible. And then we decided, hey, if we could use the Easy Drummer, which is super quality kits, recorded in the studio, and play that back through the electronic kit, maybe we could get the cymbals finally where they sound right. And that's exactly what we did. There's videos all over my channel about how we did it, and it is amazing. And I'll insert something here video wise so you can hear it. Maybe even from tonight's gig at New Year's Eve. That was the key. Going to a silent stage with no drum sounds and just everything coming through the PA out front. That, even if somebody comes up close, yes, it's not as direct, but you still hear it pretty evenly across the room when you're in the middle. I noticed that last night setting up. Even when I was in the middle, I could hear everything fine. It just wasn't as direct. And some people like it like that. They don't want to get blown away. They want to hear it kind of like not quite as loud and maybe not quite as direct. So it works for some people. And it's like being in front of a array. You don't always want to be, even though it's going to sound its optimum right there, it's going to be loud right there in order to cover a room. And even tonight, it's going to be loud right there when you're trying to get sound across 300, 400 people. There's just no way around that. So anyway, that is how we managed to get arena quality sound in a small room. And, it varies where we play, but most of the bigger rooms we play in have house PA, sometimes house drum kits, and then those rooms, they're big enough that you've got some space and all that, and so it's not such a struggle when you, one, don't have to run the PA, and two, you can use a real kit. So it varies what we do, but that's kind of where we are. So I'm almost here. I'll show you our setup. All right, so the PA. Here's the double 18 turbo sound. TXT series, way back, I got those, 2007 I think, and the SC 12 over here. And I had a pair of these single 18 turbos that were Chinese made, and the amps blew out. We just converted them to passive because we kept getting amps and they kept blowing up, and man, it really hurt my trust in turbo sound. Although I did buy some IP12s recently, and so far it's so good on those, on my small setup. So that's the PA on each side. Let me go back where you can see it all. This is our rig tonight. About 300 people or so. Be jammed in here later. I'll show you the guitars for tonight. I brought my Van Halen guitar, which I wasn't planning on bringing, but I figured some people might want to see me play that. And I've got a Wolfgang green and a Wolfgang in purple. And then my custom Yamaha. My FC12 with my pedal, my expression pedal. Run tracks off an iPad when I need them. Mostly mixing my ears on that though. And then here's the rig, the Fractal with the G90 and the awesome radial power supply. We have a radio in here for our interface for the drum module. It's connected to Easy Drummer. So this is the outputs for Easy Drummer. It's being triggered from the electronic kit. This is my singer's wireless for her vocal mic and in-ears, her power conditioner. Here is Easy Drummer running on the laptop with our kits, so you can have, you know, ultimate amount of kits. Anything you want, samples from records if you want. We use the Def Leppard sounds right off the record. And they're easily importable, and they also do have dynamics automatically. Studio Live 3, Series 3, and a great mixer for a long time. I do have a headphone amp for hard wiring. It's not one of the singers that's going to be on a hard wire. And that's the way I did it in the beginning, as I was saying in an earlier video. Drummers on this as well. It's the Art headphone amp. The DBX2, 166 compressor limiter. Use a little bit of gating on the front in case things get a little crazy. And very low compression. 1.5 is all I got on the mains. Very low. Ashley crossover has been with me for a while. PSM 900. I think I was right when I said that. We had an X2 unit in here that I had for evaluation as a backup. Rack drawer with the X2 stuff in it. PV power amps. The IPRs. Been awesome. Really awesome power amps for a long time. The drum kit. Here's the low volume Simmons cymbals I was talking about. Uses in a V-drum snare. And then these nitro pads. Pearl kick. It's kind of an expensive kick. I think it'll cost $600. The cymbals of these low volume Simmons are like $300 on a rack. So it looks cool. It doesn't look goofy. And then my bass player stuff's all in here. His Helix, and then he has a mixer in here, and all his lighting and stuff is here. And then he's doing MIDI switching on the lights down here on the floor. Helix, foot controller, and then our light rig behind us. A bunch of moving heads that we don't use unless we're doing bigger shows. Some bars, some LED bars that we use, various stuff. Sometimes we use these on our main shows in clubs. I think that's about it. I think that's about the whole rig. Let me know if you have any questions about it. It's kind of a simple rig, but like I said, ampless, except for his cabinet, which he doesn't use much. He uses this bass thing that's kind of like a butt kicker for bass players. It sits on his shoulder, and it transmits bass through his, like vibrations through his back. And he loves that thing. So that's our setup for New Year's Eve. And in a minute, well, not a minute, in a few hours, this room will be jammed full of people. Like I said, this is probably my, I don't know, it's actually more like 15 years here. So I remember we did 2016 for sure. I think it goes all the way back to 2011, actually. So been really fortunate to be in this room every New Year's and always have an awesome party. So there you go. Rig rundown.